Never mind. Let's talk about a sequence.
No one can exempt you from rationality's laws. This sounds very ominous. I'll kick us off.
Yeah, sure, because I can just say, of course, I can exempt myself. Or, I was trying to think of a funny way to kick this off. That wasn't very good.
Well, you're one of those mutants that can exempt yourself from rationality, right?
That's right.
Like Doctor Strange.
Yep.
Just like, I got a cube, so... No, it wasn't a cube. It was a jewel?
Necklace.
Necklace.
Yeah, jewel.
Okay.
And a cape.
And a cape.
And a cape.
A
Very,
cape's baller.
very loyal piece of
Really good
outerwear.
cape.
Oh, man. So things like that always kind of weird me out because, like... It's like a dog, right? You
You're like,
want
is it
something...
sentient?
Yeah, you just want something that loves you forever and will always do what you say. But then you think about that, you're like, do I want a slave that's happy to be a slave? This is weird.
I picture it's just like a single-minded consciousness that's like, protect the person that I've, selected or something, right?
Yeah, but is that creepy?
It seems to have some kind of consciousness.
Right.
Like, I feel like it... I don't know. I'm trying to remember the movie because I haven't read the comics.
It kind of sets off my creepiness alert, my, you're doing horrific things to sentient minds alert.
Yeah. No, I'm realizing that we haven't even gotten past the title and we're already like
Me too,
off
but
topic.
I was relishing in it.
But God, I have a pet peeve, and then I'll shut up about it. Is when there's TV shows, especially for kids, that have an animal that clearly has human level intelligence. It just doesn't talk, or maybe even it like does talk, and it gets treated like a second class citizen.
Like Pokemon?
Yeah.
Pokemon
yeah.
is an obvious, but like I feel like this is just everywhere. Where like even
The Lion King, they were all basically human level smart, and yet they ate each other.
Yeah.
And the lions were like, no, they're cool with it, bro.
it's the circle of
Of course,
life.
the lions would think that.
Yeah. And the gazelles are just like, sorry, we're gonna have to throw Johnny to the lions or they're gonna kill us all.
Yeah, what a weird world.
Yeah.
If you really think through the implications.
It's
Oh, that would be good.
A cannibalistic horror show.
Rationalist Lion King.
No, that would be a horror movie.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
So anyways, the first thing that is said, and no one can exempt you from rationality's laws, is that traditional rationality is phrased in terms of social rules, with violations interpretable as cheating. If you want me to accept a belief from you, you are obligated to provide me with a certain amount of evidence. If you try to get out of it, we all know you're cheating on your obligation. The point, though... Well, actually, before we continue, does that sound more or less right?
I don't know.
Yeah, the standard, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Less extraordinary claims require less extraordinary evidence.
Yeah.
Like, if I tell you I have a bag of Doritos in my car, you might just be inclined to believe it because there's no consequence to it. But if you were like, I don't believe you, I could go show you the Doritos.
Yeah.
But if I said I have Jesus Christ in my trunk, you'd be like, okay, I definitely want to take a look at this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm wondering what they mean by traditional rationality. Like,
So when
it's
I
not
hear
formalized, I don't think, but...
When I hear that, I think of the days pre LessWrong, when the new atheism movement was still a big thing, and we would argue with theists a lot on forums, and we would, bring up things like the standard A implies B, A therefore B, those, or, you cannot have these two contradictory claims at the same time.
Yeah.
Or things like Stephen said, where if you make a really extraordinary claim, you need some extraordinary evidence for that. And those were...
That's an original Stephen quote, by the way.
Yeah. And those were
Don't
things that,
Google it.
I don't know, they started back from the Greeks. I think they were refined a bit during the Enlightenment. But they were the traditional rules of, if you follow these rules on true statements, you will produce true statements as a result.
Yeah. Yeah, I just, I don't know, I thought it was interesting that it's, traditional rationality, and it's capital T, capital R, and I'm kind of... was there even a... I mean, this was, the first attempt to kind of formalize rationality, right? Except for... I mean, there's philosophy, but
I think,
there wasn't
the philosophy thing.
There was rationalism, right?
There was.
Which is distinct from rationality.
Yeah.
But there's, when I think traditional rationality, I think science. Especially science 50 years ago. Where, all you had to do was say, this is my falsifiable claim. But when you think about it, it was phrased in terms of, binary switches, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the evidence that would disprove it, right? This is the evidence that would strongly indicate that I'm wrong.
And people still used frequentist statistics like a bunch of cucks.
Oh, you're gonna make people mad. I know some people that still are really strong frequentists, and there was a big fight at one of the solstices I was at.
Really?
Or I guess it was a debate. Like, it wasn't like people came to blows, but yeah.
It wasn't like one of those 0.9999 is equal to 1. Why don't you come say that to my face, bitch?
It was like a little bit like that.
I think it was Stephen Jay Gould when asked, like, what could disprove evolution? He said fossilized rabbits in the Precambrian.
Yeah.
But like that would definitely take a heavy blow, right? But that on its own, so like that might be his scientific position or something, right? I'm not sure what it
prove time travel.
Right. So like that
time traveling rabbits
that I think would be more likely, or at the very least, I don't think that would overthrow everything we know about inheritance and genetics, right? Mm-hmm. So like
no, there's so much. Like...
Yeah. So what I would say is that would definitely take a hit. That would put a huge hit in my confidence in like the classic Darwinian model. Right?
We know there's definitely something we don't know.
Right. More likely, like it's a fake sample. Bad carbon dating, something, right?
Yeah. Or we're in a simulation and there was a glitch, because that would just be fucking weird.
Yeah. That all those sound way more likely to me than everything that we currently understand about, like, just again the 4 easy premises of evolution being wrong.
But did you get to, I guess, going back to it, did you get to the feeling that before you discovered Bayesian rationality, that it was kind of enforced almost as social rules? Like you learned them in school, or you learned them by reading about how valid thinking works, and you were like, yeah, these are the rules and we gotta accept them if we want to come to correct conclusions.
See, I think of rationality now more as like social norms, less than social rules. Mm-hmm. So new non-traditional rationality, new rationality. Yeah, I guess I would say... I guess I could see it like, these are the rules, right? Mm-hmm. If you want to be a good scientist / they didn't use the word rationalist, but make falsifiable predictions, etc. But like I said, there was no basically like Bayesianism or like decision theory in it, right? So as far as I never got that far in science. So before I discovered this stuff.
Yeah, I remember it being kind of prescriptivist. I think that's the word.
It is the word.
Or it's like
That's a damn good, way to put it. That it was more a prescriptivist thing than a descriptive.
Yeah. So,
cool.
Okay, now the first paragraph makes sense.
Yeah. He says, viewing rationality as a social obligation gives rise to some strange ideas. For example, one finds religious people defending their beliefs by saying, well, you can't justify your belief in science. In other words, how
science
dare
is
you...
your religion.
Yeah. How dare you criticize me for having unjustified beliefs, you hypocrite? You're doing it too. And if the rules of rationality are social customs, then it may seem to excuse behavior X if you point out that others are doing the same thing. It wouldn't be fair to demand evidence from you if we can't provide it ourselves.
I invite everybody to YouTube search Mac, or It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia evolution trial, where I don't want to summarize the whole sketch, but Mac is basically trying to make the case that evolution is fake, because science makes you look like a bitch sometimes by you've been wrong about, they used to think the Earth was round, and then boom, he's an idiot, and he's got like this whole board, took him 3 hours to put together.
Cool. It's
a complete. You have to, if you don't have any vibe for the show whatsoever, this will make no sense. But if you have seen any of it, then it fits this perfectly.
I swear to God, my dad has used that argument before. The whole like, you can't really. I mean, scientists don't really know anything. They change their minds all the time. They used to think this, and then they think that, and you always see like. Oh, what was... I forget the other analogy. He used the Earth as round one, but...
I've had it on more than one occasion with more sophisticated arguers coming... Eventually retreating back to, I guess, that science is your religion. You have some axioms that you just take on faith, and that you can't defend, and that's no different than taking, that God is the original cause on faith, so... We're both religionists here, haha.
At that point, I usually... Like, I haven't had one of those arguments in 10 years, but... I don't, like, clearly at that point we're not trying to, we're talking past each other, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's like, all right, well, I take like parsimony, intellectual honesty, and evidence as like my axioms, and if you don't, then we have just different goals. The thing is, you do take all of those things in the rest of your life. You carve out this one special exception and pretend like you're following the same rules, but you're not.
Yeah.
Like, when you go to the grocery store and, it's on the left side of whatever the road, you turn left. You don't turn right thinking maybe this time it'll be on the side of the street.
Yeah,
right?
If I pray really hard.
Yeah. Oh. Okay, I thought we were going to get a dog attack.
Uh-huh.
Should I continue?
Yeah.
All right. To Bayesians, the brain is an engine of accuracy. It processes and concentrates entangled evidence into a map that reflects the territory. The principles of rationality are laws in the same sense as the second law of thermodynamics. Obtaining a reliable belief requires a calculable amount of entangled evidence, just as reliably cooling the contents of a refrigerator requires a calculable minimum of free energy. If the rules of rationality are mathematical laws, then trying to justify evidence-free belief by pointing to someone else doing the same thing will be about as effective as listing 30 reasons why you shouldn't fall off a cliff.
Yeah, I like that one. I thought I had something and it's not coming to me. All right. So if two parties in a contract both behave equally poorly, a human judge may decide to impose penalties on neither. But if two engineers design their engines equally poorly, neither engine will work. Even if I'm doing XYZ wrong, it doesn't help you or exempt you from the rules. It just means we're both screwed.
Yeah, I guess I like the metaphor of engines. I think they get more into that.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think that's the primary thrust of this point is what Jay said, a little bit ago, that a lot of people think of these rules as prescriptive, like you must follow these rules to get to correct thinking, or to get to correct conclusions.
You got to follow these rules, or you're bad.
Yeah, well, not necessarily
or
bad,
you're
but
a bad
like
rational or a bad scientist or whatever.
Yeah, you may get bad answers or bad conclusions. Whereas Eliezer is saying, no, you don't have to follow anything. If you don't, you're not going to run the engine correctly. It's the brain is a thing that's trying to accurately model the outside world. That is how it, contributes to our surviving. And if you, use the laws in the same way that you use the laws of gravity, you can do things with those. And if you don't, then okay, you don't, but that doesn't change what laws determine how more likely or less likely certain things are.
Yeah, or like, it doesn't matter how well you can argue, like, why your engine should work. If you didn't build it right, it won't.
Yeah.
That's why I like the analogy. Like he's you can argue about how bad your contracts are to a judge, but like that's not the same thing as saying, but here's the actual thing you're doing.
Yeah, you can't argue with the universe.
Exactly. The only way to argue with the universe is to, I guess, you're not arguing with the universe. You're understanding it and then manipulating it, right?
Yeah.
And there's a correct way to do that, and there are lots of wrong ways to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can do it well, or you can do it poorly.
It reminds me of The Secret, or like Deepak Chopra, or the various what do you even call them, like philosophies, where like people literally seem to think that they can talk the universe into obeying their whims.
Like people who are like, oh, don't jinx that. And I'm like, sure, like the universe is listening to see, like, I hope I don't get a flat tire on the drive, to wherever I'm going, right? And I mean, and I never, it's never something like I actually get.
I sort of think of it more as like, don't tempt Murphy.
Right, yeah. But even then too, it's like, because I said that. Joke. So, for example, you'll all be horrified to learn, if you don't know this already, that like, apparently, like hospital staff and nurses and the associated helpers in hospitals, it's a highly superstitious bunch.
Oh, really?
And not necessarily, I'm not generalizing to all of them, but if you go to a nurse's station, like at a hospital, and you're like, oh, it's a nice quiet night, they're like, shh, don't say that. Are you kidding? If you say that, someone will hear you and everything will go wild. And it's like,
can I make not a steel man, but a partial defense of that mindset?
Like a plastic man.
Please do.
Maybe, yeah.
Well, because this
Aluminum
comes
man.
up a lot when trying to do large group activities where you have a lot of people that you have very little control over. In my particular case, it comes up when raiding 40-man dungeons, because that's just what I'm doing now, so that's where my brain is. But like, there's a psychology to it. Like, if everybody is on point and doing things well and focused, then things go well. And if people start to get demoralized, things get worse, even though like their skill hasn't degraded in the last 5 minutes, It's entirely a psychological thing. And like, as long as people stay on focus, things are good. But like, if someone brings up this thing they really want, like a loot drop to happen or something, if it doesn't, then everyone was thinking about like, oh man, I really hope that happens. And then the psychology is damaged when that thing doesn't happen. And then everything kind of degrades a little bit, and that can lead to a snowball effect. So my officers will often say, don't jinx it. Don't talk about that loot, because if it drops, great, everyone's happy. But if it doesn't drop and you drew attention to it, things go downhill. So it's more of a psychological
it's a morale
policing.
Thing.
Yeah, than it is actual superstition.
Yeah. If I knew that, and I didn't also know that, like, my wife works with so many nurses and stuff, that a lot of them are like into like astrology and shit.
Oh god.
But everybody, I'm not sure what the percentage is anymore, but I'm sure it's something like 30% of people claim to be astrology fans.
Yeah, when I was working in research, I was amazed by how many scientists also, had completely irrational beliefs. Like,
Typical Taurus.
they were talking about the office being haunted at one point, and like everybody, I was like joking along, and then I realized like with just mounting horror that
Exactly
like the
one of
three
us was
people I was
joking.
talking to, yeah, like actually, like, oh yeah, I've definitely seen ghosts before. Let me tell you about this one. I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
I was like, but you guys.
Weren't we just doing science? Did you forget about how science?
If you guys believe in ghosts, what the fuck are we doing here?
Yeah.
For real.
Why don't we just ask the ghosts?
Oh, good.
That was always my thing with ghosts and afterlife and even heaven and stuff was like I really wish it was true. And so when I was going through my I guess modestly painful deconversion, like I was really motivated to believe that this was the case.
Yeah.
And partly it helps later on I guess refined with the tools because I'd come to those conclusions before I discovered the rationality community, but refining those thoughts with these tools, I now reflexively, and it almost to the point where I can see it's annoying. So like I occasionally just keep my opinions to myself on stuff, but where if I find myself wanting to believe something, I immediately I hit at it way harder than if I'm either like not registering it as if I don't care, then I'm not gonna like really invest in it. But if I'm like, oh man, I wish this is true. Okay, hold on. Now I actually need to like be 100% sure, right?
Yeah.
That reminds me. I guess Enosh, you wouldn't know because you've recently become lactose intolerant. I'm looking for ethically sourced milk, and I think I found some because it says like pasture raised on the side, but it has 2 ampersands, and it says according to whatever U.S. agricultural guidelines. I'm like, okay, so what does that mean? Because I know that the $1.99 gallons are horror factories, and I've been committed to this for years, and I'm finally actually doing it. I'm trying to buy like nicer things that cause less damage in the world, and so now that I've bought two half gallons of this stuff, I'm like, all right, now I need to double check because if it's not this, I need to go find some $8 gallon somewhere, or maybe it's just impossible, and I have to find myself to tolerate a non-dairy alternative.
The best thing you can possibly do is find someone who that owns a cow and buy milk from them. Like, assuming that they treat the cow well. Interview the cow first. Be like, does he do bad things to you? But
I don't know where I could find somebody that I knew in real liff who had a cow with enough to spare.
I mean, you live in Colorado.
There's a lot of farms, yeah.
I know people. I know one person who lives out in Parker with they have 1 horse and 1 mini horse, which is really cute. Yeah, Bojo.
I love mini horses.
Bojo, the little mini horse.
But yeah, it's very hard, and it's not a scalable solution because not everyone can know a guy that owns a cow and is nice to it because, there just aren't enough people. And if you wanted to get a lot of those people having nice cows, the milk would go to $10 a gallon or whatever.
This sounds like more of an aside, but this actually is more of the point of me reflexively challenging something I want to believe. I was at Sprouts, and it's like this like Whole Foods times 2 more hipster slash
friendly,
so whatever. There's
Sprouts and natural grocers are just like it just feels so Denver-y.
Yeah, there's definitely, and it's like the most like.
Are they not nationwide chains?
Maybe, probably. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not really sure.
Didn't have them in Jersey.
Okay. I'm just mentioning that it's this place that's like Whole Foods on steroids, on liberal steroids, and it's great. But there was a thing of milk there. It was like $8 for a half gallon, and on the thing it said from like a single Amish farm or something, and I'm like, I'm calling bullshit that a single Amish farm has the technology to like carefully or rather like delicately and nicely produce enough milk at scale to sell to a national chain. Like, so I mean,
you said it was $8 for a half gallon.
Yeah, but
maybe at $16 a gallon.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I'm just thinking like,
maybe
okay,
this farm is very large.
Yeah, like all right,
or maybe one guy, like technically it's all this one guy's farm, but it's
like this dude and his wife, and they're just pumping out kids so they have enough to milk all the cows.
I think they use machines, but
so I'll have to check and see if those cows are happy.
No.
Anyway.
All right. It ends with, remember this, when you plead to be excused just this once, we can't excuse you. It isn't up to us. So that was how it ends. On to a priori.
Yeah. A priori. To Bayesians, the brain is an engine of accuracy. If you violate the laws of rationality, the engine doesn't run. And that's hypertext I'm assuming to the previous post.
Yes.
This is equally true whether anyone else breaks the rules or not. And like, I love this. This is exactly what we're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. And that's... at a meta level, what I love about the sequences and like the order they were kind of just like, spewed into existence, right? Mm-hmm. Like he makes a good point, and then like kind of refines it with another angle, and that's what this is doing. Yeah. And we while analyzing the previous post, we hit some of these points already, right? Yeah. Probably doesn't hurt that we both read both of these. We all read both of these posts before we started, but
yeah, actually, I think that there were parts of each that I was getting confused. Like I forgot which points were made in which essay.
Yeah, they blend together.
They blend together.
This is a good pair of posts. All right, consider the problem of Occam's razor as confronted by traditional philosophers. If two hypotheses fit the same observations equally well, why I believe the simpler one is more likely to be true. You could argue that Occam's razor has worked in the past and is therefore likely to continue to work in the future, but this itself appeals to predictions from Occam's razor. Occam's razor works up until October 8th, 2007, and then stops working thereafter, is more complex, but it fits the observed evidence equally well. Fucking love it.
Which is the date that this was written.
Yeah.
Do you think he knows he was being funny? Like, making some of these exact points?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just like...
He's got a good sense of humor.
It's comedy. Like, but it illustrates the point really well.
Well, you missed the first sentence, I think, which was, traditional rationality is phrased as social rules, with violations, interpretable as cheating. If you break the rules and no one else is doing so, you're the first to defect, making you a bad, bad person.
It seems there's no way to justify Occam's razor except by appealing to Occam's razor, making this argument unlikely to convince any judge who does not already accept Occam's razor.
Yeah.
And then parenthetically, why are some of those words italicized?
Yeah, he italicized justify, appealing, argument, convince, judge, and accept. And yeah, that's because all of those are words that you would try to use when making an argument, when trying to convince someone of something.
I'm not going to be able to argue you had that broken treadmill in the basement. You're not going to be able to argue it into working. You're using Occam's razor this way, right?
Yeah.
Look, but I plugged you in. The other one, when I plug it in, it works. What the hell's your problem?
Yeah, you got to manifest it, though. So I guess you just don't really want it.
Oh, this is that secret stuff?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that really, pisses me off.
But, that technically sounds like a thing that could be true. That you can't justify Occam's razor without using Occam's razor, right? The justify part is the key here, where the thing is we aren't trying to justify anything.
Right. Yeah, and I was just thinking about The Secret.
Sorry.
No, you're good. It's like, luckily this came out right in the height of my new atheism, argument era, and it was the most egregious pop culture idea I had encountered, more so than common religion. Mm-hmm. Because the obvious question that first comes up is well, hey, why did I get attacked? I didn't want that to happen. Well, you must not have not wanted it enough, which is a horrifying thing to say, especially to a survivor of abuse or violence. And there's no way to get around that. And so I don't. Yeah. This is why Oprah is number one on Skeptoid's list of top 10 harmful promoters of harmful pseudoscience. Mm. She seems like a nice woman. I know that she does a lot of good work.
Oh, yeah.
But she needs to vet her... And I'm not sure where she's at now. This was 15 years ago that I was aware of Oprah. Does she even have a show?
I think she still does.
Hopefully.
She definitely still has a magazine.
Alexa, does the Oprah show still exist?
Wow.
Okay. According to our robots, it ended in 2011.
Yes.
That was a really good answer. I was surprised.
Me too.
Yeah.
While you're doing that, I looked up the definition of justify because they're talking about justifying Occam's razor, and the point I guess he was making, which we were just talking about, was that these are words you would use to try to convince a human person rather than the universe or physics that don't care about your arguments. But
yeah,
I don't know. I was compelled to look up justify, and so we've got verb to show or prove to be right or reasonable. But then apparently the second definition, theology, declare or make righteous in the sight of God.
Oh, interesting.
And now I'm wondering which meaning. I think because he was using other words that have to do with law. He was using the first definition, but it's just, I don't know.
It's a cool secondary spin on it.
You're really making me want to talk about a show that I just watched that...
You can talk about a show you just
Before
watched.
you do that,
we should finish.
Yeah, well, I want to just, jump in and say that I was trying to get to the point earlier. I'm not sure if I made it. That no one is... Well, some people are trying to justify Occam's razor to the person they're arguing with, but, that is not really the goal. We don't care about justifying it to people. We just observe that Occam's razor works. That when you apply it... you get correct answers, and that's the same thing with the laws of thermodynamics. You're not trying to justify to someone, look, if you heat one end, the heat's going to go to the other because of these and these reasons. You're just like, look, bitch, we heated one end, and slowly the rest of the thing warms up because it conducts heat.
If you don't believe me, touch it.
Yeah.
No, that's a good way to bring that point home. And like, again, in the early days of my arguing with theists, I'd be like, well, here's the laws of logic and this sort of thing. And they'd be like, well, I just don't care about that. I'm like, all right, well, I can't logic you into accepting the laws of logic. Again, with the caveat of, yes, you do. You just you carve out this exception for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, all right, well, clearly then we're not. I mean, it's like arguing whether or not you can move a knight this way in chess.
There was,
and it's like, but you can't. It's like, yeah, but I think I can. It's like, well, then we're not playing chess anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. You physically can move it wherever you want, but then you're not playing chess.
Right.
Which is, yeah.
There's, there was this, Richard Dawkins debate, I remember. It's probably still on YouTube. If I can find it, I'll put a link, if anyone cares. But it was, he was arguing with this, like, creationist who just kept saying, that there's too many gaps in the evolutionary record, and well, we haven't really found enough evidence. And he was like, well, actually we have. Well, in between humans and apes, no, we have a lot of them. And there's like, I don't know, she just kept saying like, well, there's too many there's not this thing. And when he would say specific things like, oh no, we have tons of fossils. They're in the British Museum. Mm-hmm. You could go look at them. And she just kept repeating, well, we don't have them. And he's like, we do. We have them right. You could go look at them. Go.
I remember seeing this there.
And it was like she just broke. Like she refused, like she couldn't engage with, like, I don't know, I guess she expected that to be a knockdown argument and had no ability to actually think. And it just really kept repeating it.
It really annoyed me that people, upon seeing that, thought that Richard Dawkins was an asshole. Like, that was one of the things they would link to, like, Richard Dawkins is an asshole. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Well, because he's right?
Well, and I imagine that the person he's arguing with, I only remember this being vaguely recounted in the God of the Gaps chapter from The God Delusion. And that's what this phenomena is called. If they say, well, what about the gap between, this area of understanding? Well, I filled it. Oh, but now there's a gap on either side.
Now there's two gaps.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think what I imagine happened is that, she was raised being told this her whole life. And then it's like, no, actually, you're wrong. We can go look at it together. I'll buy your ticket to the museum. And, like...
I think he actually did say that. Okay. Where he was like, I'll take you right now. Yeah. Like, we can go look at them.
Be happy to. And then at that point...
You're like offering to pay her ticket, but he's the asshole.
But then I think it's like, from her perspective, it's like, well, hold on. Now I'm being... So like when you said like she just couldn't think, I imagine it was just like kind of a cognitive car crash.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, hold on. I was told that that's where this road went, and now you're telling me that it's not. What, and I'm making bamboozled facial expressions as I'm imagining what was going on in their heads. So
I've experienced like a lot just cognitive shutdown, usually with like some kind of intense emotional trigger. To use a a word that we might raise eyebrows at, but
I think it's a perfectly valid word.
Yeah, that triggers are real and do exist, but like in the context of like PTSD, not like I'm vegan and I saw a picture of me. I don't know. We don't need to
you're
talk
triggered,
about that
but
right
we're
now.
not going to respect that.
You need a trigger warning that picture of a pomegranate because it looks like violent or something.
Oh yeah.
Anyway. If your fellow philosophers do not demand justification for your unarguable beliefs, you will not demand justification for theirs. As the symbol for your treaty, your white flag, you will use the phrase a priori truth. And that's truth before observation.
Okay.
Yeah. A priori is prior observation, or prior to observation. Our Latin listeners, our Latin-speaking listeners, Wes, will no doubt be able to more... or cleanly articulate that than I just did. But...
Fucking lawyers and their Latin. Yeah, he says the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy defines a priori propositions as those knowable independently of experience. Wikipedia quotes Hume, relations of ideas are discoverable by the mere operation of thought without dependence on what is anywhere existent in the universe.
This is contrasted with like a posteriori beliefs, which is like, this is what I believe after looking at stuff.
Yeah. And apparently one of the common examples of that is 1 + 1 = 2. And in reply to that, Eliezer links back to his post on how to convince me that 2 + 2 = 5. Because I think he makes a good point. If all the evidence consistently shows that adding 2 and 2 together makes 5, you kind of accept the evidence. So this whole thinking about things to without any resort to the evidence is stupid.
Yeah, it's like then... I mean, this just gets into like those things that are fun for a couple of years and became less fun for me. Examples of like, well, I can think of things like, whatever, all chairs, by my definition, are things that you can sit on.
Okay.
I can sit on this, therefore it's a chair. I don't have to know what the
definition.
Exactly, yeah. But like, if I can say all A are this, B is an A, therefore B has whatever trait A has. Right. I can know that before observation. But you kind of have, I guess, either just believe what you're told about B, or like go look at it yourself, right? So I don't have
like that one. God, I forget what this example was from, but when a bunch of people were told all elephants are pink, Maurice is an elephant. Is Maurice pink? And the answer was like, I don't know. I'd have to go see Maurice, because they were like, I'm not sure I believe your your suppositions here. And it was just supposed to be a strict test of logic, and applying just logic. Yeah, of course Maurice is pink, but they weren't willing to accept the question giver's word on this thing.
There you go. They're bad a priori arguing philosophers.
Yes.
Yeah.
But probably less easy to trick.
And they're good rationalists.
Yeah. I don't believe it until I see it.
Yep.
But...
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was just going to read the last one that we have here. Don't try to tell me that a priori beliefs are arbitrary, because they sure aren't generated by rolling random numbers. Brains evolved from non-brainy matter by natural selection. They were not justified into existence by arguing with an ideal philosophy student of perfect emptiness. This does not make our judgments meaningless. A brain engine can work correctly, producing accurate beliefs, even if it was merely built by human hands or cumulative stochastic selection pressures. Those are badass words. Rather than argued into existence. But to be satisfied by this answer, one must see rationality in terms of engines rather than arguments.
Yes.
Twite.
Right. Did we want to touch on this thoughts thing real quick?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I'm not sure how relevant it is, but this was in response to the thing that a priori beliefs are discoverable by mere operation of thought. Elias points out that thoughts exist in the universe. They are identical to the operation of brains.
Oh, I skipped that part. Yeah, my bad.
Material brains in the real universe. So when you add 1 + 1 and get 2 by thinking, those thoughts are embodied in flashes of neural patterns. In principle, we could observe, experientially, the exact same material events as they occurred within someone else's brain. You could see someone else's engine operating materially through material chains of cause and effect to compute by pure thought that 1 + 1 = 2. How is observing this pattern in someone else's brain any different as a way of knowing from observing your own brain doing the same thing? When pure thought tells you that 1 + 1 = 2 independent of any experience or observation, you are, in effect, observing your own brain as evidence.
Checkmate, atheists.
Yeah. That, like, I don't know if you actually used... I don't think so, but, like, it reminds me of the idea of armchair philosophizing.
Yeah.
Where...
Or any sort of philosophizing. I know. I personally just got a distaste for it.
No, there's good philosophy.
Yeah.
I think...
There's excellent philosophy.
I think go that far. I think there's good and excellent philosophy when you're not trying to use philosophy to generate beliefs about the world, but, like... virtue ethics is the philosophy about how to live, right?
Yeah.
Stoicism, another good example.
There's also philosophy that takes, like, evidence into account, and...
Yeah, I mean, what can we reasonably infer? I don't like drawing hard lines around what's philosophy and what's thinking other kinds of thinking patterns, but yeah.
I think philosophy, any decent philosophy can be replaced with a good enough Bayesian statistical model. It's like, so this is why the philosophy channel in our Discord is named Math for Babies, because once you apply enough math to philosophy, it just reduces to, math.
Well, that's just your philosophy, man.
Yeah, right. Yeah. If you don't know math, if you're doing math for babies, you're a philosopher.
I don't know. There's utilitarian things that don't work great. Like, what is it? Repugnant conclusions or whatever.
That depends on which utilitarian arguments you accept, I guess.
Yeah, and that does kind of come down to philosophy. I mean...
Which is why philosophy is bad, because it comes down to arguments that you're trying to make other people accept, as opposed to laws of statistical thinking.
Well, like, if you're trying to decide what you should do...
Yeah.
I don't know what laws of statistical thinking I'm looking for when I'm deciding whether or not to buy cruelty-free milk, right?
Well, I mean, when we're talking about the more colloquial sense of, see good and bad, I like, good philosophy, then yeah, sure, that's great. But when I think of the philosophy I dislike, it's more about the armchair mental masturbation that gets done in high-level universities. Like, people
Or
are like,
just,
"Here's my theory."
or Philosophy 101 classes. I mean, that was my, like, those are some of the most fun classes I had. You could just sit there arguing this random shit. It's great.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Like, you're the first time I encountered, like, serious arguments for dualism and stuff were, like, riveting, if not compelling, right?
I mean, once you have serious people discussing arguments for the existence of philosophical zombies, that's when I'm like, okay, you've clearly lost your own head inside your ass.
I like that.
You need to do some spelunking.
Go spelunk your way free from this weird belief you've got.
Yeah.
All right, so we have for next time priming and contamination, and do we believe everything we're told?
Excellent.